Hello, this is Michael Berry from UCLA, and it's a pleasure to be on the jury for the 2017 Los Angeles Chinese Film Festival.
Meet Professor Bai. It was actually 18 years ago.
That long.
That long ago.
Well, I think it's best when you go to any film festival to approach it as if you're going to see any film, and that is to not have expectations. Because so often when you go to see a film, you have a certain generic expectations that it's going to be an action film or a drama or a horror film, and that skews how you approach those films. And I think for a film festival, it's a kind of macrocosm of all these different films of all different styles, all different visions of these various directors. And I think it's best when you come to a film festival that you let go of your expectations and just be prepared to go on these exciting new journeys with filmmakers who maybe you haven't seen and films that you haven't experienced. And I think that's probably the best way to experience these exciting films.
你的幸福是什么？他非男非女，超越了凡俗性别。
主管不见了。你说的是钱的事儿，可污染是命的事儿。
Well, there is certainly some mutual influence, more so from Hollywood into China rather than China into Hollywood, although the last few years there have been a lot of Chinese flows coming here into the Hollywood industry. If you look back historically at the way these two industries have evolved, the type of films that came out of China versus those out of Hollywood, they just have a very different history, different political context, different sensibility in terms of storytelling, in terms of aesthetics. And so they're coming from very different places. And although the two industries do interact and collaborate in certain ways, and they have over the years, I think they're still very, very different industries. And they function very differently, and the films function differently. And so it's hard to say, pinpoint one thing when you're trying to really look at why or how they're different. But one thing's for sure, you can't take the kind of market, cinematic, aesthetic values that you project on one industry and then apply them wholeheartedly to the other. They don't translate directly. Of course, a lot of big Hollywood blockbuster films have done very well in the Chinese market. But still, I think when you look at local Chinese films, there's just a different sensibility, a different style of storytelling, a different mythology, a different political subtext that they're playing off against. And so that creates a very kind of exciting biosphere of different types of films, but yeah, they're quite different. Well, I think co-productions, in terms of the way the industries function, it does help them communicate because they've got to work together. They've got to collaborate. You've got to bring these different studio heads and directors and producers and actors and crews together to come together to create something. So I think there is a certain learning curve that both sides go on when they come to the table and try to make films together. And I think each side is required to step outside of their comfort zone a little bit and learn about how the other industry operates. At the same time, I would say in an ideal situation, you would hope that when you have a co-production, it sounds very idealistic in a way, because hopefully you would think you're going to take the best elements from the Chinese film industry and the best elements from the Hollywood industry and put that, or whatever other foreign, partners involved, and you bring them together and you create something new, exciting, innovative, something people haven't seen before. However, what often happens with the co-production model is the stakes are so high in terms of the investment, and also there's so much, I wouldn't say manipulation, but there's so much calculation in terms of figuring out what's going to work for the Chinese market, what's going to work for the American market or other global markets. And when you try to make a film that's supposed to please everybody, it's like you're trying to cook a meal for a group of guests, and this one's a vegetarian, this one doesn't eat spicy food, this one does. Basically, everybody has their restrictions, everybody has their taste, and if you want to make something that's going to please everybody, it turns out to be something very bland and something that doesn't really have any unique characteristic. And so there is the pitfall of a lot of co-productions, is that what the eventual output isn't something innovative and exciting and dynamic, but it's something very conservative and something that's not taking a lot of risks. And I think that's really one of the tragedies of a lot of the co-productions that have been made over the last several years. For audiences, this is a great opportunity to see a lot of new, exciting Chinese films that you're not going to see elsewhere. I think one of the tragedies of the Chinese film industry of the last several years is that how much it's been dominated, overwhelmingly so, by big budget commercial films. And what that has meant is that smaller budget, more independent films, short films, films that maybe ideologically are a little more risky, they just don't have a forum to be exhibited and to be enjoyed. And I think one of the important aspects of this film festival is that it's meant to highlight independent cinema, and that within China there's increasingly fewer forums for independent cinema to really flourish and to shine. And so I think it's a great opportunity to see these younger filmmakers, see kind of new and exciting cinematic visions, and I hope people will come out to support these films. Another really valuable aspect of the Los Angeles Chinese Film Festival is the openness, because a lot of festivals in Asia are increasingly ideologically bent to a certain geographic site, right? So a lot of PRC film festivals focus mostly on films from the PRC, and the same for other regions. And I think, given we're in this kind of third space here of Los Angeles, the focus can really be on just good filmmaking that's depicting the Chinese reality, whether it's coming from China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Tibet, overseas film directors who are working in China. And I think that brings a certain global vision to the festival, which is very exciting and very unlike what you see at a lot of the other Chinese language film festivals. When I think about some of the Chinese films that have most impressed me over the years, the vast majority of them have not come out of the major studios, but they've been smaller independent films. Films like Xiao Wu by Jia Zhangke, that was sometimes called The Pickpocket, a very intimate portrait of a young man in the mid-90s trying to get by in a town that's caught up in the throes of transition. Or I think of other kind of early sixth-generation films by Wang Shaoshuai or Zhang Yuan, and these were films that were just very daring, and they were doing something below the radar, looking at marginalized figures who were living on the edges of society. And they weren't the kind of figures that normally you saw talked about in mainstream films or depicted in novels or you see on the news at night. These were kind of the everyday person, not the hero, and certainly not the archetypes of socialist China, the workers, peasants, and soldiers. And this was really a very exciting new cinematic vision, and I'm really happy that the Los Angeles Chinese Film Festival is kind of picking up on the independent thread of Chinese cinema and trying to create a new forum for those types of films to have a way forward. I look forward to seeing everyone this November at the inaugural Los Angeles Chinese Film Festival.